I truly believe that all startups and technology companies are going to be AI first. And what does that actually mean? It means at some point, everybody in the company has to be a builder.
Every single rule is being rewritten. Employers and founders, CEOs have more power than we had 3 or 4 years ago. We all feel a little bit more comfortable saying, no, we're not going to do it the way that you say. We're going to do it the way that I say.
Employees are most inspired when they're like, hey, this is war, and the person who's leading the organization's in the field with me fighting this war.
We already have these half-day Fridays, which ultimately was like Sam's face. Like,
I'm
you
trying
still
to do
do that?
a thumbnail snippet. That's stupid.
That's dumb. Half-day Fridays. Who does that anymore?
Hi, everybody. It's Sam Jacobs. I'm the CEO of Pavilion, and I'm joined by my co-host, Asad Zaman, the CEO of Sales Talent Agency, and AJ Bruno, the CEO of Quota Path. Welcome to Topline. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about Vibe Coding Fridays, Good Vibes Fridays, or Good Vibe Coding Fridays. We'll figure out what the correct acronym is. We're also going to be talking about a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, Your Boss Doesn't Have Time to Talk to You. The dearth of middle managers is creating an impact and a strain on employees at both levels, senior managers and individual contributors. And finally, we'll be diving into ARR. What it means continues to degrade. People are lying about their revenue, and that's not cool. We'll figure out why they're doing it and who should go to jail. Welcome to Topline.
Sam, that last one, it's like you had a personal vendetta. It's like that was Sam just wanted to personally say those words out loud, and he truly does believe each and every one of you need to go to jail for
I think you
lying
should
about
go
your
to
revenue.
jail for being a damn liar. And I think your startup sucks. It's not nearly as good as you say it is. And it would be great if you stopped lying about it.
It is quite crazy what's happening these days. So it's going to be interesting to click into it because I've been following this a lot on Twitter, and there is some insane things happening.
Ooh, I can't wait to hear. I just feel like you're always playing at both sides because I want to kick off that section with an excerpt from a newsletter that I get on a fund where I'm an LP. But this same person that writes this newsletter was guilty of it just a couple months ago, hyping up what the ARR was for a company that they incubated, the CEO and founder of which has subsequently left to become a CRO at a different company. So I just feel like, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors right now, smoke and mirrors, and a lot of, I used this word last week, hullabaloo.
Hullabaloo.
I really
like
felt
that
like I
word.
nailed it. I landed the plane when I found hullabaloo in my brain.
I usually hear somebody who's had a child recently say hullabaloo. I don't know why those two things are related.
Do you know what should happen to those companies that are lying about their revenue? They should be audited by the IRS. Do you know what's not happening to them? They're being not being audited by the IRS. Do
You know who is being audited?
Why?
Who's being audited by the IRS?
This guy.
Oh my God. Individually?
No, company.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
are you a liar?
The IRS has a lot of really important things to do right now for the federal government. So a venture-backed startup.
Hot take is that the IRS is way, way more lenient than the New York State, the state of New York. State of New York the state of New York is a bunch of evil, evil people, and I wish the tax people in the state of New York. So I just wish them
Not great
ill.
things.
I want bad things to happen to them professionally. I don't want anything to happen to them on a personal
Sam
level.
is sending everyone that he knows to jail right now.
I'm just sending bags of flaming poop and leaving it on their
He's
door.
playing Monopoly straight to jail. No one is winning in Sam's Monopoly game.
AJ, what does it take when you get audited? Like, how much energy and time will this take of yours? Is this like 5% of your time, 10% of your time?
I mean, I don't know if this is like, am I allowed to talk about this right now? I don't even know.
Probably not. You probably shouldn't. You might incriminate yourself.
The reality is we're audited every year by outside auditors on purpose because, we have some real funds that back us and they care a lot about, are we on the up and up? And so we already go through this. It's more of a, hunting down all the paperwork. You have things like R&D credits that exist in the U.S. that we've got to go make sure we're fine. I'm not worried about it. I'm not losing sleep over the IRS.
Well, let me give you this piece of advice. This is the mantra of the Navy SEALs, and I encourage you to adopt it. Admit nothing, deny everything, make counter accusations.
I love the counter accusations.
Yeah. I'm gonna audit you. You're the liar. IRS. You're stupid.
Okay, so we're going to start with AJ doing something really interesting, which is dedicating Friday afternoons across Quota Path to vibe coding. So, what is vibe coding? A couple of quarters ago, Andre Tripathi named what is the process of writing code and building applications using these AI tools as vibe coding. And this isn't new. This is like a trend that's been happening for a couple of decades now, where the language we use to create software and technology has been moving closer and closer to natural language, and AI just catapulted it. And so you've got this spectrum of vibe coding. You've got engineers on one side that are using things like Cloud Code and Cursor to write production level code. And then on the other side, you have everybody that's not a professional engineer, that's not making production level code, using tools like Replit and Lovable to take their ideas from their heads and create concepts out of them and have some fun. And so, AJ, you've decided that this is something important, and you have dedicated Friday afternoons, company wide, I believe, to this exercise. Tell us a little bit about your thinking. Why did you do this? How does this work?
First off, I have to give a shout out to this podcast, and I'm serious about this. I think having the ability to talk to CEOs like Eric from Bolt.new and just the docket, Asta, that you've been able to put together over the last year has really opened the aperture of just thinking of what's possible. I know Sam has dabbled in it and coded some things in Replit. We've talked about the challenges and what the problems are, and through that, I've started to explore just not myself, but also with my team and the engineers. And what I've realized, Osid, is that something that we did really early on at Quota Path has lended itself well to us being a really strong vibe coding culture, potentially. I say potentially because we're still just really early in this, which is we've hired a lot of operations. And when we did that, revenue operations, which I know you're a big believer in,
Big
and
fan.
having operations as your foundation means that they're not fully technical. Yes, Ryan Milligan knows SQL. Yes, we made Brandon Smith AI ops, but they're enough to be dangerous. And we have a plethora of folks across the organization, across Quota Path, that fit this mold. We have Graham, of course. Wyndham, our chief product officer, he's technical, but he was a former revenue operations leader. So everyone has this just like curiosity of like thinking what's possible, but without the actual technical understanding. And so one part of it is that these folks have on their own started to explore it. So it became this moment in time of like, okay, if I truly believe that all startups and technology companies are going to be AI first, then what does that actually mean? It means at some point, everybody in the company has to be a builder. Well, how do we actually get that to be a reality? And how do I mix my traditional engineering culture with this more operational AI first? Well, at the beginning of it, we had this idea of just good vibes or good vibes channel, which we send out like customer wins, and also we have half day Fridays. We've always had half day Fridays. So this took a moment to say like, oh, well, we already have these half day Fridays, which ultimately was like Sam's face. Like,
I'm
you
trying to
still
do
do that?
a thumbnail snippet.
Yeah,
That's stupid.
that's dumb. Half day Fridays. Who does that anymore? It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Uh,
You're not hard. You're soft.
Yeah,
You're
softy, big
soft everywhere,
softy.
you little
I
softy.
Yeah. Well, here's how I've taken that and actually transformed it and involved it and said, you know what? Everyone has that time. Let's actually use this in thinking back to a Google throwback where they had Wednesdays to kind of code their own things for the engineering team. Let's make this a whole company thing and let's incentivize it, because guess what? Incentives work. And so we said, okay, you all of you can self-realize and self-actualize your own teams, and you can use these tools, and here's how you use these tools. We'll set up Zoom and we'll go through it. We didn't have a lot of structure, and we haven't. It's only been 3 so far, but from that we've created 3 production ready apps, and it's awesome to see them, and we present them on Mondays. And right now they're in internal tooling. They live in Retool, But eventually
Tell
we
us
will.
about like something that you think has come out of this that is usable long term, like one of these
I'll give you
apps.
2 examples. I'll give
Yeah.
you 2 examples. One is when a rep goes and talks, someone signs up for a demo, and we look at their team, we look at their industry, but we have demo data, which is just like normal demo data. We have like 3 different types of demo data. You could do enterprise or you could do mid-market. It's all just fake data. In this world, Brandon and Graham created Deal Generator, which allows you to create dummy data that looks at the team, the sales team that is demoing, and looks at their composite of like, do they sell mid market? What industry? What types of deals do they sell? And then makes up deals, thousands of deals in that vein. So it mimics their sales team and then
Mm,
puts the dummy data directly into the demo workspace. So it's much more of like a model home. So immediately and
interesting.
takes like 10 seconds. This is also useful because if you're dealing with thousands and thousands of transactions and the engineers need to debug, they can just automatically load that data into a workspace and test it out at a high volume. That's one example. Another example is Michael Davenport, our sales engineer, built a visual layer on top of connectors to visualize Salesforce connecting to QuickBooks, connecting to other systems. So it was just a front end on sitting on top of all of our APIs. So you can actually, as a customer, see what joins are now happening in real time. Basically, rebuilt Workato's front end in a different way. And so those 2 projects are currently in internal tooling, and then we'll continue to test them and eventually productionize them to release them to the app. And that's what we're still figuring out. So it's really actually kind of challenging to figure out how do you take this code, because as both of you know, it's not
It's not
production
very
ready.
good code.
Yeah, and how do you actually get it into an app and potentially commercialize it? And I'm hearing about companies that are commercializing their vibe coded tools right now, but we haven't figured out.
It almost feels like you have to create a concept in it, and then just if you like the concept, you have to start from scratch and write like real code in a proper way. Like I don't think you can like I don't think it's like 60% there, and then you tinker with it and you get it. I think you just use it as a concept
It's
engine,
an
and then
MVP, and as a visual CEO, someone that just loves to see things to come to life, it's a playground. I mean, I absolutely love seeing it. Now, after doing this for enough time, I've probably spent like 20 hours in some of these tools. You get to see the patterns, and they reuse a lot of the same libraries and the same things. So in some ways, it's actually just templates. It's like a Squarespace template that might be there, and that's what I'm seeing and starting to dig into. But if you just similar to prompts, if you give it clear prompts, it feels a little tighter. I think GPT-5 is probably the one that's breaking that mold a little bit. And what they're doing is they're going outside the prompt and adding things that like you don't suggest and seeing if it if it works or not.
so it feels like you're doing this because you're a visual person. You have a bunch of non-technical people in the business. This gives you guys a chance to get more comfortable with AI and see how powerful it is, but also start coming up with ideas and bringing them more to life than just, let's say, writing a document about what the idea is or sketching it out. And some of this stuff can go into production. So it's like culturally moving your organization from a SaaS era company to this AI forward thinking type of organization. And along the way, you might get some cool stuff that you build out. What do you need to like? Is this something you see yourself doing till the end of the year? Do you see yourself doing it forever? Like, how do you
I think
think about?
I think it evolves. I think what it really does, Offset, is it allows me to see which of my employees are going to be AI first and which
Ooh.
are not fully leaning in. I'm not saying it's a test per se, but it's a really important part of our culture to be curious. And I can have a binary mechanism of a 1-0 as to whether someone is actually doing that.
Sam, this is interesting. So, do you think how else? Because this is something I've heard CEOs really struggle with, and other execs too. Who in my team is using the things, is trying to leverage them? and is going to be part of this new wave of how we do things, and who is just kind of stuck in the old ways? This is obviously a really interesting way to figure it out. What are your thoughts on this challenge that execs have of like figuring out who on my team is actually right now, and how do they go about figuring this out beyond maybe what AJ is doing?
Let me start with the first comment, which is, last week we said we repeatedly say, actually, you guys say, and it's really more AJ says, everybody should be a builder, everybody should be hands on keyboard, including the CEO. And as you're describing this, AJ, I am not convinced that I agree with you. I am not convinced. You stupid piece of shit. You dumb mother. No, I'm just kidding, obviously.
For those that are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I just gave a very shocked face.
We're just trying to do some thumbnails. I think like there's a specialization of labor idea here that I'm just not sure. Where we landed in this last little conversation was that it's sort of like Figma. It's sort of like Canva in a way, right? It's like you're doing these MVPs, they're mock-ups, they're prototypes to convey an idea. Maybe they help you convey the idea more effectively, and then maybe you hand it off to somebody that can actually code or develop. And so I think that that's definitely like interesting, and maybe it's teaching some other kinds of skills that are not so straight line, so linear, about like how to think about strategy or how to think about the execution of the business. But it still isn't clear to me that would be a good use of my time, because when I've tried to do it, it takes a really long time. Like if you're going to actually get something to a place that you're happy with, it takes a couple of hours. It's not something you can do in 10 minutes. Now, maybe that will help if I'm trying to build something internally to convey. Maybe if I have an engineering team, it helps me to convey my understanding of some of the core elements. Certainly, if I was an engineer myself, I think it would probably be useful because I could analyze the code and figure out how to improve it. But it's still not clear to me, given the challenge of like this idea of moving it from prototype into production, and everybody's sort of open, wondering aloud if that's even possible. Of course, it is possible, but it's possible with a tremendous amount of oversight and work, which is, to Asad's point, similar to just like building the thing from scratch anyway. So, and as I've said, a lot of times you might spend a long time doing something and then realize that it would have been easier just to use Squarespace or to use some kind of template or to use make.com or Zapier, like 1 degree removed from like core vibe coding, which is basically like, highly complex automations that are WYSIWYG and easy to interact with and that are low code or no code. So I will say that's like the first question that I have, because I do struggle, Asad, with, and we're going to talk about it when it comes to managers. At the same time that I'm saying that, I am wondering aloud how many people are using AI in a way that is more creative or inventive than just rewriting emails. And I think we're all figuring that out. I'm not sure that I'm using AI, as well as I could be. Although, of course, I do use it every single day. And I use ChatGPT pretty much every day. And then I'm trying to alternate between Claude and Perplexity. But I'm mainly using it to structure unstructured thinking. That's how I use AI. And I don't know if others are using, I don't know if they're building, because the point I'm making about vibe coding is if you can tell me these use cases are ideal for getting this done. And it's the same related point that I made about the gap between 1999 and 2000 when it 2007 when it came to the launch of the internet and the iPhone. I still feel like, okay, well, what am I supposed to vibe code? And what exactly is it supposed to do? And where do I find the gaps? And I feel like we're all in this search, and that's great. But I think there are going to be product-oriented companies that say, these are the things that you should, quote unquote, vibe. We're making clay, or of course it's not clay, but silly putty or something like that connects these things, and this is how you should do it. All of that is to say that I think good vibe coding Fridays sound interesting and fun. And I think the deal generator is actually quite cool. So I'm not saying that anything that emerged from it isn't useful. My comment is it the best use of everybody in the organization's time, or are we fooling ourselves into thinking that?
Well, Sam, let me ask you a couple questions here. First, I want to go back to the hands-on keyboard, the CEO, because this is a point of contention that I've had with a few people, including an investor conversation about this. One, I think you're similar to me. Where do you do your best strategic thinking?
That's a great question. I do it on runs.
Exactly.
The
Same.
toilet.
I do it on a run. The toilet. Yeah, we know that,
We call it
Asid.
private time. We call it PT in this household. You need two PTs when you wake up. I used to just need one PT, and now
Now you
I'm
need
finding
to.
that I need two.
And when you get done with your runs, and or you think of you have a really good thought,
Yeah.
how do you actually write that down? How do you communicate that to paper so you remember it?
It's a great question. And recently, what I've been doing is using Whisperflow to speak into AI to help structure it. But previously, I might either not write it down or try to like rattle off a long winded email to somebody that works for me or with me.
Yeah, I write myself. I do the same thing. I'm gonna actually get Whisperflow because Siri is just not cutting it. It's the worst. Siri is absolutely
Isn't it
trash.
amazing? It's a multiple trillion dollar company that
Yeah.
anyway. Okay.
I mean, one other side note, the Meta AI glasses that Pavilion provided were great, but you can't run with them apparently because they broke. The sweat got into the speakers and they broke. So I can't run with them anymore. So
Well, why
anyway,
would you ever want to do physical activity while wearing,
the
eyewear?
sunglasses?
It's a joke.
Yeah, why would you ever? Oh, got it.
Oh, you're moving? Oh, yeah. Don't move. What
Yeah,
did
it feels like
you didn't
Ray-Ban
say you were
and
going to
Facebook
move?
did not think very far into this. My point is that I similarly do it when I run, and so what I've realized is I can take those thoughts and then actually like make them come to life a little bit more, and it becomes a little bit more real. It's just a step function into my strategic thinking of going from running to getting it on paper, then paper to what does it look like visually. And for a product company, because that's what we are, a SaaS
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
which is what we are, that's really important. The second thing I will note is I 100% agree with the idea that, you know, your team, are you going to really take your team's time to do this? Well, that was the opportunity that I saw, which is Friday afternoons are free anyway. Like,
Mm.
let's just take this to actually make this productive, for some people that want to do it and incentivize them along the way. So yeah, I look at it as almost free time, that we're getting back to the organization. And I don't know. I think everyone's right. I don't know anything that's going to come out of this, but I believe the future of this is that, everyone in a company is a builder, and that's what I'm going to build to.
I think what you said about this, like Friday half day being taken back, like that's a really interesting part of this because I find that I've made this mistake where you create this rule in the moment and you're like, from now on we will do this thing, and it's really hard to take these things
You can't
back.
take it back. We've talked about taking it back many times. We were like, oh man, we're doing layoffs and doing a riff 2.5, 3 years ago. Like, should we really have half day Fridays? And we're like, no, culturally, that's always a thing. But it's 23 days of PTO that I'm giving
It's
my
a
team.
lot, and no one
23
thinks that
days.
it's 23
And
days of PT.
by the way, I am 100% certain someone either had Glassdoor open or was thinking about it when you're like, "Hey, we're going to vibe code on Fridays in the afternoon when you supposedly had it off." And they're thinking to myself, they just stole from me.
Stole my
They just
PTO.
stole my this
I had a
guy,
massage
AJ,
booked.
flying around in his plane. He's flying around in his private jet and he's just issuing orders from the sky.
Getting birds.
I did this thing once where, so I think it was my first or second year, and traditionally we would have, I think, the second half of December off because it used to just be so slow. We like take the time off, and I think it was my first year. I was like, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to work through this. And people were like, you stole Christmas. You took Christmas back from. People were very upset. Like there was I've rarely dealt with that type of pushback, but there was like serious pushback, and you just can't take these things away. So this is an interesting way to do it, where you've now taken it back to some extent, and you can change the thing you're doing. So vibe coding can become like prospecting for half day Friday, right? But you can take it back and keep changing it now to other things. I think that's really interesting. I've never seen anyone be able to take it back
For good
without like.
vibe, for today's Good Vibe Friday, we're going to ask you to do 200 cold calls.
you can you can use AI in the background while you're doing it.
You can do whatever, but yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
We're building a company by doing cold calls. Top of the funnel matters, people. Let's get our pipeline up.
I worked at similarly, Asad. I worked at the Muse, and they took off. They had like this. It was just the most extravagant use of venture capital. And they're like, "Yeah, we do a ski trip every year, and we take and we don't work the last 2 weeks of the year." I'm like, You know you're not profitable, right? Like you're not making money. No. This is so people are happy to be here. It's like stop, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, anyone just be careful. Always time things. Like whenever you're implementing something new like this, just give it a lifetime. Like we're gonna try this for the next 3 months and see what happens.
The problem was we did this from day one. We were like, no, this is it. We're doing this culturally. And I actually think in general it's worked out, and we've had plenty of moments. I will also say that right now, Good Vibe Coding Friday is optional, and we are taking attendance.
Yeah,
But
and you
since
should
AJ is
fire.
using this as a way to figure out if you're using AI or not, I don't know how optional this is.
I think you should fire. It's optional for the people that want to continue working at Quota Path.
It's also required to listen to Topline at my company, so
I
there's that.
mean, what's the percent? Can we do a quick? Hold on, Asid. Quick straw poll: percent of STA that listens to Topline.
Ooh, I would say like 50, 60% probably.
That's pretty good. AJ, Quota Path.
Probably 30%. Though a quick story on this because I didn't get to do a shout out to him last week. But we were in Mexico for a CS offsite, which it was not spouses. It wasn't a ski trip. Don't worry. It was like it was an offsite. And I went running with Sam Lafarbe. Sam is a CSM, and we were running. At the end, he's like, "Hey, by the way, 2 weeks ago on Topline, you said this thing that really caught my attention, and just out of the blue." And I was like, "You listen to Topline?" He's like, "Yeah, I've listened to every episode." So shout out to Sam, who's also digging in and part of Good Vibe Fridays. We aren't going to do shout outs or wins of the week, so I'm doing mine early, but I think it's only 30% to answer the question.
Yeah, I think mine's like 20%. How do we feel about that? What do you think about
I
that?
think it's weird. Like if I'm an employee and there is a place where I can understand the thought process of the person running the business, I'm going to really try to consume that information. I think it's a missed opportunity when people don't. And I know this is like, oh, listen to my podcast, read my newsletter. And it's like, yeah, but like if you're trying to figure out the strategic narrative that the person has in their head, that's also going to guide the organization or how we're reading the markets. And how that I think is a real missed opportunity if you do not consume that information.
It's actually, it's a great question. I'm going to do this test and figure it out. And anyone that doesn't listen to Topline, well, you're on notice. I'm just kidding, but there's one seller.
To bat on LinkedIn.
There's one sales rep that I bet does not listen to it. I'll call him out, Hector. The thing with Hector is he always gets messages from his friends that do listen to Topline, and they're like, "Oh, I just heard this on Topline," and one actually vibe coded their own thing because of Topline. So Hector, listen to Topline.
Before this is your last chance. Before it all ends. All right, Asid, let's move on to the next topic on the docket.
Okay, so we have a new article on the Wall Street Journal titled "Your Boss Doesn't Have Time to Talk to You." And the premise here is essentially that there are some really large organizations in the US that are aggressively cutting managers out of their organizations. And Google recently announced that they have 35% less managers today. Amazon has announced that it's working on cutting the number of managers it has as well. And this trend holds true across sectors. You have banks like Citibank that are working on doing this. You have companies in pharma like Bayer that are doing this. And if you look at the entire bucket of US public companies, we have 6% less managers over the last 3 years. That doesn't sound that much because if you had 100, now you have 94, okay. But really what's happening is not every company is aggressively cutting their management layer out. And so the ones that are cutting 30, 40% of the managers out. And if you have 100, now you have 60. That's pretty intense because those 60 have a lot more people that they have to manage. And it feels like because of that, they're almost rethinking what they think management is all about. Management, as Peter Drucker had introduced, was more than just supervision. It was setting goals, it was motivating people, it was developing them out. And maybe that's possible if you have 5, 6, 7 direct reports. Is it possible when you have 20? Maybe what we want is completely changing. Sam, what are your thoughts on this trend that we're noticing? And can you help shed some light on what are we trying to get and what are we trading off for it?
I think we are in the most exciting time to be working that any of us have ever lived in. And that's because every single rule is being rewritten in this platform shift. And this is just one more example. What should an organization look like? To set the context for the audience, right? The historical norms are that there's a span of control. I don't think it was Drucker. I actually think it was the U.S. Army that said one person can reasonably manage 7 people. And there became these hierarchies of middle managers because every time you got to 6 or 7 people, you needed to add some kind of manager, and that person had managers, et cetera, and all the way up, turtles all the way down, as they say. And I think that was also, over the last, 20, 30 years, was the idea of the weekly one-on-one and the idea that the manager is a coach and a mentor and your career guide, and also the person that gives you your objectives and what you're going to be held accountable to. And, you have to be this combination of psychotherapist, but also tough football coach or sports coach, plus sympathetic when the time is right, but also motivating and inspiring. And I think now with AI, I think we're seeing a lot of this change pretty fundamentally. I also candidly think some of this really, whether you like him or you hate him, you got to give credit to Elon, because I really do think that the Twitter situation where, and I don't know the full numbers, but I think these numbers are, I think there were 7,000 to 8,000 people that worked at Twitter or X. And I think that now there's about 2,000. And he cut the workforce by 66%. And even though all of the, aggressive woke liberals were saying like RIP Twitter and the website's about to crash, it hasn't crashed. X is, at all-time highs in terms of popularity. This is not a political statement. This is just to say one of Elon's core principles. I've been listening to the founder podcast about Elon, and it's like delete, delete, delete. Challenge stupid requirements, delete things that you think, and rebuild once you see that something breaks. And I think we're taking that approach to management because I think some of this stuff, it's time for it to be questioned. It's time. Do you need a weekly one-on-one? Well, Jensen clearly doesn't think that you need a weekly one-on-one because he's got 60 direct reports. Do you need, where is your motivation supposed to come from? What is the job of the CEO? Is it, or every manager, is it to provide motivation and context, or is it really just to provide context and you're supposed to harness your own motivation? And the vision or the strategy should be clearly communicated from the CEO. What I'm seeing even in my organization is that there's, and this is the challenge, and I'm sure, Asad, you're facing this as you're looking at candidates for open roles, which is that I think that there's still a hesitance. There's a hesitation that happens within senior managers about getting their hands dirty. So even though on the previous segment I was saying, I don't know if it's a good use of a CEO's time to be a builder themselves and to be coding. At the same time, and this is another Elon idea, like you are supposed to know how your organization works. You are supposed to be able to get your hands dirty and solve problems on behalf of the team that you're managing. And I think there's just too many people that can't do that. And even many of the people that are of my generation, so I'm late 40s, right? And I think the people that emerged and have now been in senior executive positions for 10 to 15 years are very allergic to even like doing a pipe review, with a team of account executives. If it's a C-suite title, there's a hesitation, there's a hesitance to actually to getting down into the weeds without saying, well, I need my RevOps person. I couldn't possibly answer that question without a RevOps person, or I couldn't possibly answer that question without this person, who is really just an information layer between the person asking the question and the person with the answer. Last thing I'll say about this is the person that has the ultimate perspective on this is Andy Grove, right? Which is, when he wrote High Output Management, and also, of course, Only the Paranoid Survive. And his point is, if you're going to be a manager, you need to be a force multiplier of the resources underneath that you are managing. And I think what's happening is we're questioning that reality. If I'm putting a 200 base, 250 base person with maybe 400 to 500 OTE in between me and the people doing the work, that person better be adding a tremendous amount of value, and not one-for-one value, because we're trying to generate, significant returns on this capital allocation and capital deployment. So it should be that if you're spending $500,000 on a CRO or a CMO, you expect $2, $3, $4, $5 million of improved productivity as a consequence of adding that management layer. And I don't think we're seeing that. I think that You know, the pejorative phrase that I've heard that just resonates very deeply is surplus elites. A lot of people with fancy degrees that are sitting in between the people doing the work and the people making the strategy decisions. And if you can't do either of those things, you're just a way station for comms. We don't need that anymore because we can put all of our data into, we can put unstructured data, slurp it up by AI, and ask it a natural language question. And that's better for me than asking a middle manager that is dancing and tap dancing around whether or not they even understand how the machine works.
AJ, when you hear that, do you agree? But what do you think happens to all these managers? Because what Sam is saying, I see it all over the place. I see a lot of managers. There's this thing that stands out to me. I spoke to a guy. He was a manager at Microsoft, managed the sales team. He was at Microsoft for 11 years. His career was very much, his resume looked like somebody who was getting promoted every couple of years. His teams were performing. But then as these companies have been cutting their management layers, he lost his job. And it has been about 11 or 12 months, and his experience in the job market is just crickets, because your experience makes you only a fit for the very large companies, and they're just not hiring managers. They have too many. And so what happens to that person? Does that person have to go and become an AE and the same equivalent in other functions? Like, instead of managing your product team, you have to go become a product manager? Like, what do you think happens?
They go into different career like trade services, and it's possible that they just have to career change. I love this topic. I do agree with a lot of what Sam said. However, there's always nuance and it depends. He brought up Jensen Wong. If you guys had a guess, what do you think the average tenureship is on Jensen's management team of working at NVIDIA?
7 years.
Yes, 10 years.
16.6 years. So a big part of that is over 16 years, that guy knows his 50 employees, his 50 direct reports. He knows them well. And what he's done is he's built a level of trust that doesn't exist in other organizations. And you also brought up X on the other side of it. I'm no comment on the political nature of it, but what I will say is if a CEO comes in and cuts 70% of the workforce, do you think he's built trust with the rest of the team that's staying? No. Now, what he has to do is exactly what Sam said.
I
You
would
have to
argue
delete.
that. I think he builds
Well,
trust.
how?
How does he not? How does
How
he
do
not?
you?
He
How
comes
you?
in. You're assuming everybody is the same. At X, you probably had Twitter at the time. You probably had two types of people: people that were really into this whole woke nonsense that was going on inside Twitter, and then some people who were there because they loved the product, they loved the mission, but they were like, what has this organization become? So in the 2000 that were left, I'm sure there were some people who were like, man, we needed to do this.
Again, it's nuance and depends. Who was the CEO right before Elon?
Otterwall,
And no, before him.
Dorsey.
Yeah, Dorsey was.
Who was the comedian guy?
Oh,
Was it
Dick
Trostlow.
Costello.
Dick
Yeah,
Costello.
that's it. Dick
Yeah.
Costello.
He the comedian guy. Is he really a comedian, or is that Costello's you mean Abbott and Costello?
No, I mean Dick Costello was like a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
knew he
prior to-
joked with his team, but great example. He memorized every single employee's at Twitter
What a
and
useless waste of time as well.
had
Like, this is why
conversation.
he was a short-term CEO.
This
That is a
is
ridiculous thing to do of 1,000 people. I know their names. What are your
These are
results?
great
We
takes
haven't
from
grown
Alfred.
much because I was busy reading their names and memorizing them.
that's not true at all. He was acquired. His company was acquired. He was made the CEO, and he took the company public. I don't understand.
I
What do
don't
you
know if
mean?
it was a very successful 10-year CEO. Eventually, he was pushed out.
Regardless, the point being is that they had a founder that was beloved by that organization, and they had someone else taking over. Now, at the end of the day, maybe it doesn't matter. This has nothing to do with politics. It's just creating a relationship and building trust with your team. Asad, do you know the family members and spouses of your direct reports?
No.
Huh. Sam, do you?
I couldn't name you one of their partners' names. Probably one, maybe two.
I do. I know. Yes, I do. Generally,
I feel like
speaking.
this is a good example of just philosophically, this is just a difference in management and how we manage our teams, and that's totally fine. I have always just felt like a camaraderie or something where Angela and I go out to dinner with Ryan Milligan and his wife Katie.
Jamie is probably one of the closest relationships I have in life, right? Like this is literally one of the most meaningful relationships. We've known each other for 12 plus years. We have never gone for one of those like, let's take our partners and go for double. Never in our lives. And
I don't
both.
think that sounds like a good idea, AJ. I have to say, I know Milligan probably listens. That does not sound like a good idea. To do that regularly?
No,
No
I
way.
mean once or twice a year. I don't think that that's that big of a
You know
deal.
why
Well,
I
this is
think
the
one
question.
shouldn't do this?
Why?
It becomes friendship. And
Yeah, that's
when you're
exactly my
somebody's
point.
boss, you can't be their friend. You can love them. Like I love Jamie. He loves me. I love a lot of people in the organization. I'm not your friend that way, right? Like, and so I think the relationship can be very substantial and meaningful
I
and real.
strongly disagree.
Well,
Strongly
I strongly
disagree.
agree with Asad. This is sort of my point about like this age that we're in right now. I'm ready to challenge some of these fundamental assumptions. I'm ready to challenge. I mean, listen, AJ, I think that you're first of all, like one thing that's true is there's probably 15 different ways to achieve success. You know, we have to remember that capitalism is a dynamic system. Like, yeah, like if that what's bringing you joy and energy, and you bring your best self because you know everybody's wife and you know their kids, and like that's awesome. And maybe
But I
and
don't think of
maybe
us as a family. I certainly can say that they're friends, but that's totally fine.
if you wanted to layer Milligan at some point and bring in a CRO with 20 years of experience, but you're actually going out to dinner with him twice a year, and I mean that would be an awkward dinner, I guess.
Oh, well, here's the thing. We're the three of us are colleagues and coworkers. I have
Yeah, but
dinner with
we're
you
equals.
guys.
We're equals. We're not
Yeah,
subordinate to
we're
each other. You don't work
co-founders.
for me, and I don't work for you.
At the end of the day, I look at building a company as it takes a lot of work. It takes a heavy amount of work, and the hands-on keyboard and leading by example piece of it, I take very seriously. And so
The hands-on keyboard part is like, I do think you have to be like Sam, what you're doing with Pavilion Gold is you're in the field, you're doing stuff. And I think that's the core thing is like CEOs today and executives of all sort, they have to have productivity beyond management. They have to be, I think employees are most inspired when they're like, hey, this is war, and the person who's leading the organization's in the field with me fighting this war. I think that's really, really inspiring. And I think that materializes in different ways. For a product company, that might be spending a lot of time in Replit and being like, look at this new feature I conceptualized while I was showering, and then I've built it, and you click this, and this happens. And for other people, it might be what you're doing, Sam, which is that you're like, I'm creating this new part of my business. I'm going to hold it by the neck and run it to a point where it gets product market fit, and then I'm going to build an org around it. Like I want to give it life. I think we're all doing the same thing with Topline, where we're like, in these early days, let's us breathe life into it as we're scaling this out, and then we can bring somebody in who can manage it. But at least giving it a soul has to come from us rather than outsourcing it to somebody else. That said, I think when management, how you manage people, there are different ways. I'm sure the friendship approach has pros and like some pros to it. I just find that it doesn't fit my particular style, and I wouldn't enjoy those dinners, or like it's not my way of living life. And so if I think if you don't want to do it, probably because so many people for so long thought that's the best way to do it, I think knowing that you don't have to do it and it can still be fine, that's a good thing to know.
objectively, I get it because there's people coming into a management team could have there'd be challenges and could be issues in that sense. Maybe they don't feel like that they belong. There's a lot of traps with it. 100% agree. And I'm not best friends with everyone on my management team. And there's plenty of people at the company that they're going to go about their day to day, and that's totally fine. At the end of the day, though, I'm also just a human being, and I have plenty of friends inside and outside of Quota Path. At my 40th birthday party, most of my management team was at my 40th birthday party, and they had a great time. And there was also 120 other people there. So I just
120 of my closest friends. I have a question for you guys. Okay, pulling this thread a bit more on this like cut of management out of these organizations. A lot of people are saying we're doing this, Sam, because of AI. AI is enabling us to be able to get rid of a bunch of people because AI is making us more productive. So we do not need as many managers, we don't need as many people in this function, etc., etc. Do you think that is just we've all used the AI that's out there today? Is that AI good enough to cut 35% of managers?
AI is a proxy for technology. I think people are seeing AI, and there's lots of things that are not AI that are just productivity enhancements. There's this guy, Nathan Thompson, and he works at Copy AI. I think he's, head of content. And he can produce 10 times what a normal content marketer can produce because of the way he's designed all of these AI powered workflows. But is that AI? I mean, some part of it is AI, sure, and some part of it is Make.com and Zapier and all of these automated connections, which are not necessarily AI. They're just the evolution of technology making things more productive. To your point, Asid, I think we're using it as an excuse. I think what it really is a function of the leverage between employees and employers. And I think employers and founders, CEOs have more power than we had 3 or 4 years ago. And I think that means that we are questioning. I think it's partially political, it's partial socioeconomic, but I think we all feel a little bit more comfortable saying, no, we're not going to do it the way that you say. We're going to do it the way that I say. And if you don't like it, you can go find somewhere where they do it the way you say.
I have a feeling that a lot of it is just companies got really fat, and there was a lot of fat on the bones, and they've got this perfect opportunity where when the place I saw Google announce this was CNBC was had this front page thing. Google cost 35% of their managers, and the public markets love this. And then you had we're doing it because of AI, and the public markets love it even more. I think that's positioning. I think really what happened to these organizations is they became really, really bloated. But I don't think the AI is having some massive difference where one manager who could manage 8 people can now magically manage 16 people and do a really good job. I think that manager is going to be stretched and is going to change what they are giving the people that are reporting to them. Because if the AI was that great, that means that 16 direct reports get the same experience as the 8 direct reports did. I don't think that's the case. I think the experience is changing. They're okay with that. And they're just using AI as positioning to the market to get a stock bump. I think that's kind of what's playing out here.
Well, this is the fundamental challenge with it is it's all based around communication. And so if you go from 8 to 16, your communication gets cut in half. And that's what is going to cause ultimate issues. And I see this pop up in our leaders that have 12 to 15 underneath them, where their ENPS comes back. All of the people, like the 360, everyone says, I wish I had this person's more time. I wish I had more time, more time, more time. That's always the case. To me, that says, okay, this is someone that everyone wants their time. They just can't get it. So they're probably really good at their job, but maybe they could use some help in terms of delegation and getting their team up leveled themselves, because it's just not possible. Especially if I see someone that's been at Quota Path for like 5 years and they're asking for their managers more time. Like people should be asking for your time, not the manager's time. And also, this is I'm going to go back to this since you both disagreed to it and I can't help myself. um I think this is a big part of why I do spend a huge amount of time with my management team, even outside of work, is that communication, and people like to be communicated differently. I feel like if I have to have hard conversations, I can do it with someone that I know and I'm much more empathetic to their situation of anything that's going on in their life. And I can still have the hard conversation. Believe me, ask Graham if I've ever had hard conversations with him.
I would rather just be less inclusive and hire people that I can work well with based on the style that I like working with, rather than saying I should have to hire everybody of every sort and I should switch my management style to each person. Like, no, build a team that you can manage.
I think Asid is perhaps the most polarizing figure on this podcast, and yet he has the highest approval ratings from his team. And I think I come out strongly on the side of what you just said, Asid. I think all of this comes down to if we can hire people that we like working with, that like working with us, then we can adopt any style that we want. And because there's alignment, and I think when you have a lack of alignment, which I've had a lot over the last couple of years, it's because I have sacrificed hiring standards or been talked into hiring a different profile of person than the person that I personally would actually want to work with. And I just remember very clearly this moment when, it was a team of 50 people. Pavilion was like 50 people. We're now, 30 people. But we had a diversity council. And it was already the most diverse place I've ever worked. All of the leaders were we had a higher percentage of people of color, higher percentage of women. We had a diversity council, and it was totally insane to me. And I just remember somebody saying like the diversity council meeting was great last week. Jeremy really had a lot of good points, and Jeremy's like the whitest dude you can ever imagine who swam at Princeton and has had every benefit in his life, and it made me feel. So what's my point? My point is that when you lose control of the profile of people that you want to work with, that's when you need more layers of management, because there's going to be more nuance, and you need less nuance and less customization if you're really tight on the profile of the person that you want to work with. And when I've worked with STA, it feels like there's a consistent profile of person. It's diverse in the terms of, if you look at where these people are from and what their backgrounds are, it's incredibly diverse, but it's not diverse in terms of the personality profile of this person was an athlete. They want to win. They'll do anything to win. They don't mind answering emails over the weekend. When Asid sends them a note at 3 a.m. on Friday, they write back at 4:30 a.m. on Friday. And I think that that's really, I think that's interesting. Okay, one last topic before we call it a day, and I'll set it up for everybody. So the concept of annual recurring revenue continues to degrade, and I'm going to read you something from a newsletter I got this week, and then we're going to talk about it. Most AI startups we speak to are reporting this revenue as ARR in their decks and pitches, when the startups are just in 3-month trial pilots. They are reporting ARR in their decks and pitches, even though those customers are not paying full price today and can walk away at any time in the next 12 weeks without penalty. With AI companies growing faster than ever, it's not surprising to see companies going from 0 to 1 million ARR in 3 months, or 0 to 2.5 in 6 months. The challenge: you have no idea how much of that ARR is real, contracted ARR, and how much of it is pilot revenue that could churn out 3 weeks after the fundraising is closed. We have this new concept, experimental run rate revenue, which Jamin Ball quoted. We're seeing a level of buying and urgency we've never seen before. They just don't know if these is actual annual recurring revenue. It's short pilots, opt-out contracts, or deals that only count once they convert. It's fundamentally unstable. So how do we feel about this evolution? Asid, I feel like you've got some great tidbits from your time in the field recently.
I heard somebody say this. They had a launch, and in 11 days, they generated $300,000 in revenue. And then they wrote, "We're the fastest company to get to 100 million in ARR." And it was the same tweet. They're like, 11 days, 300,000. Now we're the fastest company to get to 100 million ARR. And you're like, what? Like, what are you saying? And basically, it is the growth rate in those 11 days multiplied by the rest of the days of the year, compounding, that got them to 100 million. And I think this type of stuff is happening a lot, where first there was the fact that pilot revenue was being counted as ARR. Then there was the fact that maybe it's not a pilot, but it's just experimental. Like, some point solutions are not going to pilot you, but you're just going to buy them as an internal pilot, and they're counting that as ARR, even though they don't have long-term contracts and they haven't had a renewal cycle. But now we're in this like insane period where you're just like multiplying what you generated in a week into the rest of the weeks of the year and saying, look at us, we're a $100 million business, fastest to ever get that. And I think this is really interesting. It's the sign of a bubble where you have this type of growth of revenue, you have this sort of instability in the revenue, you have this sort of churn risk. I think these are all bubbly signs. But the thing I keep thinking about is, does it really matter that this is like, what changes? Like, what does revenue matter for? It matters for your valuation and for investors. Sure, they play a power law game. They're going to see some signals that this company could do well. They're going to deploy money in 10, 20 different startups. One of them will work out. The rest, they burn and crash. And they're going to try to get in. If the market's hot and the price is high, they're going to try to get in. They're not going to walk away from these deals saying that the revenue is unstable. So I don't know if it really matters, but it is weird, and it is a sign of a bubble.
We've noticed this for a while. This has happened for years. I think there was a competitor to Pavilion about 4 or 5 years ago that will go unnamed, that has since gone under. And I remember talking to the founder of that, and they had a pilot with Gong. It was a 3-month pilot, and it was like I think they were paying like $60,000 for that 3 months. And so he just extrapolated it, and he was like, okay, cool. That's $160,000 ARR deal. And I remember having this conversation with him, being like, it doesn't feel right. And Sam, you'll remember this. We were talking about this competitor in a cab. We had just landed at Essex County, and you mentioned this competitor, and you were really worried about them. And I had just had this conversation with this founder, and I was like, Sam, I'm fairly confident you don't have to worry about them.
Do we think this is a problem? Is this a problem, Asid? That's the question. Like, so there's a lot of noise. I think it's a problem when I see Harry Stebbings tweeting about investments that are going to, 50 million in 12 months. And, you hear about like the Bessemer giving us the new benchmarks, and this is a supernova, and this is a dwarf star, or whatever the fuck they call it. And it's like, I don't even know if any of this stuff is real. So how can I know how much to believe about the hype that you're selling me? What do you think?
I think this is the thing that like no one knows. And so if you're that company and you're claiming pilot revenue as real ARR and you are extrapolating things, and you haven't had a renewal cycle and we don't know if it'll churn or not, you don't know. Like you don't know. And you're just playing the game that's on the field. And some of those companies will not have horrible churn. That's also, probably true. Like some of these companies will be just fine, and some will have horrible, horrible, horrible churn. And you won't know till the time comes to find out. And what's you look for signals to get some attention, to get some resources. And if this helps you raise a bunch of money that gives you the chance to fight a long fight and be able to navigate and maybe over time even figure out the churn problem, that's the game on the field and you're playing it. Like I get it. I get what they're doing. I think it's bad. Like you shouldn't, but I get I find that free will is less and less as common as I thought it used to be. And we're more dictated by market forces than we like to believe. And I think this is market forces driving a lot of behavior out of people. And so I've started maybe having less pointed opinions about them because I think maybe they're not in as much control as we like to think they are.
I may have a chip on my shoulder about this, and I feel like I do, because I feel like the founders or funds or anyone promoting any of this crap they haven't earned their stripes. It's not real. They haven't gone through it. The thing that Jesse talked about in our interview with him that I've really felt a tie to, and I feel like, oh, this guy knows it. He's building an AI first company, but he clearly stated, like, you have to have all of these enterprise ready things inside of the product. You have to you cannot build these things overnight. There's a lot of pieces to a company that you actually have to build in. And so these companies that are going from 0 to 100 million in revenue in 3 months, they don't have any of those. And what it's ultimately causing is distrust of these companies. I mean, in that newsletter, you talk directly about it, Sam, which is all these companies are now doing pilots and trials because they don't know what's working. 95% of AI is failing, and they don't have trust in the system. So it's causing a whole bunch of challenges across the board where companies are not only are they slowing down because of economic factors or spending, budgetary, but now they're slowing down because they don't know what's real and what's not. And so it's gonna continue to cause issues. I think it sorts itself out. But that's the bubble.
That's exactly what I was going to say, AJ. It sounds like a bubble. Sounds like a bunch of noise. I said last week, it's a bunch of hullabaloo. There's a bunch of stuff, and then the dust will settle, and we'll figure out what's real. But it definitely feels like that's how you know it. In a way, that's a sign of a bubble, that it's becoming harder and harder to figure out what is true and what is not true. And everybody's getting caught up in hype and mania. And that's why, again, like for me, the lesson is ignore it. Be aware of it, but do not change. I just find the frantic nature of some of these updates to be fake, having lived through a bunch of these cycles.
It's really interesting when people start using revenue growth as like a marketing tactic, which is, I think, also a sign of a bubble where you have so many startups that are able to say things like 0 to 10 million, fastest ever. And they use that as a signal, not just for investor attention, but I think for customer attention as well. And I think that's also a very bubbly sign. But we have to remember some of these companies will have good net revenue retention. They will have good churn.
We need to go back like a year or 2 years and find all the headlines of companies of this, fastest to 10 million, 100 million, and see where they are now. Do like a look back.
Oh, they just won't tell us the truth, so it'd be hard to know.
Okay. It's Labor Day. So
It's Labor Day. We're working on Labor Day, Sam.
we're working on Labor Day. And so as we end it, maybe the question of the day is your prediction for the state of labor, any aspect of it, same time next year. What changes? What stays the same? What is your take? I'll go first while you guys ponder, if you'd like. I think the unemployment rate for university grads in the US will reach double digits by the same time next year. It's about 8% now. I think it gets to about 10% next year or more. And I think once unemployment for any cohort that's large enough gets to the double digits, I think there's a lot of animosity that leads to a lot of pushback in the system. And I think next year we'll start feeling that. Whether the economy is good or bad, if the economy is good, they'll be annoyed that their life is so shit and everybody else is having a good time. And if the economy is bad, they'll be even more upset. And so I think there's going to be a lot of turbulence caused by that younger cohort and the experience that they're having by the same time next year.
My take might be a hot take. I think unemployment will be down. So it's at 4.5%. I think it's going to go to 3%, 2%. And why do I feel that way? Well, what's happening next year in the US? It's election season. So we're going to be at midterms, and it's a really important election cycle for someone in the White House. So I feel strongly that all the numbers, everything is going to be great. Everything is going to be wonderful, fantastic. Inflation doesn't exist. Nothing exists. Honestly, I'm being tongue in cheek in some ways, but actually, I do actually believe that we've made these predictions, and the truth is things have stayed pretty steady state, strong. Yes, inflation's up, dollar is down. Those are very challenging things for us in the US to navigate. But I do think we're going to navigate the complexities of AI. And I disagree with Austin. I think that the labor market is going to be doing just fine.
I agree with Austin. I think I'm an AI optimist for sure, and I'm a technology optimist, but I think in the short term there's going to be some pain, and I think markets are a little overheated. But I also think that interest rates are going to come down, and I think
Well, they're coming down one way or another.
I think the markets will be good. Like the next 12 months, markets will be good. Like I'm bullish about the overall economy.
I don't know. What's my prediction? My prediction is I will be very happy 12 months from now.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you agree with all of my predictions, give us 5 stars. If you agree with Sam and Osid's, you can still give us 5 stars. But just
I
be
would take the
vocal
over on Sam's.
about all of mine today. This was Sam and Osid versus AJ Day, which, one side came out on top. We'll see.
I think this was a great episode, and I appreciate your work putting the docket together, Osid. AJ, you did a fantastic job, and I think I did a pretty good job myself.
Yeah, you did a great job, Sam.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Topline. Give us 5 stars. Osid, are we allowed to tell people to go to YouTube, or we don't want to tell people to go to YouTube?
Go to YouTube. If you like watching things on YouTube, only if, then please go to YouTube, search Topline Media, subscribe, watch our things.
Every person that clicks on one of our videos is counted as $1 million in ARR for Topline, and we'll be up to 50. We're the fastest podcast to 100 million ARR. We should construct a sentence that has no meaning, no logical coherence to it at all. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.
Everyone.